Welcome to the first episode of the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday podcast. I'm Camille, your podcast host and CEO of Morningstar Arts Creative. Morningstar Arts Creative is a 501c3 nonprofit headquartered in Savannah, Georgia. This year, we've mobilized outside of Georgia and we're connecting with different coastal communities to give information and deliver unique, creative, meaningful art experiences. This first podcast is to set the intention for the creative flow as we get into our Waterways, the water that divides us, connects us project. We're specifically focusing on the creative process because that's the way a lot of artists tend to approach putting together and building components of how they bring perspective to the artwork they're producing and how they get over some of the obstacles that sometimes emerge within the creative process. The Wednesday, Thursday component of the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday podcast is going to be audio. So when you access this piece of the podcast, it is not going to have any visual to it. It is just going to have a selected color. I'm working on Dolby, so the features are a little bit different. And the reason that we're doing this is because we want the podcast to be accessible for the vision impaired as well as the hearing impaired, which is why Friday we bring in a visual component. So this is something kind of new. The flow is new. The creative process is new. So it's going to seem a little piecemeal at first, but as we flow into the summer and we prepare for our fall activities, we hope to be pros in the podcast arena by this fall. If you've had a chance to listen to or subscribe to our YouTube channel, our handle is at MStar Arts Creative. Then you've also had the opportunity to kind of get an idea of what we're going to be talking about with our snidbits. I created a series of snidbits for each episode, and our intention was to start with 18 episodes, but we've kind of scaled back a little bit because we're testing this out. As I mentioned, this is our first podcast. So we're going to scale back from 18 episodes to 9 episodes, but we already have 18 episodes prepped, and they're prepped within these snidbits. So if you get a chance, if you have or you haven't, subscribe to our YouTube page at MStar Arts Creative and listen to our snidbits. Now we can get into cutting out and carving out time for creativity. I mentioned that we have a series of snidbits for 18 episodes, and one of our first snidbits, which is going to align with this first episode, is how do you find time to be creative? And really, what does that mean? If creativity doesn't flow in your day normally, are you setting out time in the weekend? Is it something that you think about? Is it something that you don't think about? How much really in your day-to-day tasks and day-to-day networking do you use the creative process? And what I found is that being a special projects director in a nonprofit and putting projects together is that creativity is essential. It's not something that you can skip over or that you can schedule. Sometimes you need to put that flyer together. Sometimes you need to put a lesson plan together. Sometimes you need to find a creative way to communicate with people who have language barriers or who have a level of comprehension that is different than yours. You have to be flexible, and sometimes structure allows for that, but sometimes structure is not creative enough. So we're going to be covering a lot of that when we talk about creativity on Wednesdays. I'm going to kind of give you a little flow into how really this all evolves into Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. A lot of people probably think, well, why not just have it one day a week? Or, why Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? That's a mouthful. Well, how this podcast title came about is that on Wednesdays, the middle of the week, sometimes we find ourselves kind of lost. If you weren't productive and got things taken care of in the first part of the week, you find yourself at Wednesday thinking, I need to get this done by Friday. And truly, your Wednesday turns into Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So a lot of people have different acronyms for different words. And Wednesday, Thursday, Friday just happens to be a successful acronym for the flow of your week if you don't make it past hump day. Sometimes you will be finding yourself saying WTF, not just writing it on your calendar. So something that's going to be kind of funny and also flowing into the creative process is a question that we're going to ask our artists when they come in, talk and give insight and reveal about their techniques is, give us an acronym for WTF. Ours is Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays. Some people's could be What the Friday. It could be another acronym. So we're going to let everyone kind of think about that. What does your Wednesday, Thursday, Friday really look like in an acronym? If you're not just writing down the days of the week. I've covered what we talk about on Wednesday. So for Thursday, I'm going to just give a little bit of insight into how we're going to expand on what we talked about on Wednesday into Thursday and how that conversation flows into the virtual open studio, which we have on Friday. So the idea is that you do follow us while we podcast Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and that if you're not able to follow us, that you can connect back on a day that's good for you. So if Thursdays, you find that to be more conversation and you're ready to flow into Friday and do an activity with us and you missed Wednesday, on Friday we'll kind of go over everything that we talked about, not in repetition, but more so in the form to fit the project that we're actually working on, the creative process we've actually experienced, and the artwork we're bringing perspective to. So these 9 episodes of the podcast are going to be centered around waterways, oceans, lakes, and rivers. And we're going to be talking about and creating from the source of materials that comes from oceans, lakes, and rivers. So we're going to be using rocks. We're going to be using sand. We're going to be using shells, and we're going to be interestingly combining all of these elements to talk about our overarching theme, which is the camouflage perspective. We're not only going to be camouflaging in with our environment, but we're going to be talking about how as humans we camouflage to fit our situation, be it a situation where safety is at concern or a situation where we're trying to blend in. So even though our focus is art, we are taking our approach to reach a deeper meaning to add on to that meaningful art experience. So this podcast is not just a regular art or how-to or an unboxing of tools. It's more how the artist reveals their techniques, what the techniques demonstrate, and how these techniques have been used from the past to the present and how we'll use them in the future. So Thursday kind of is the connecting piece. Our Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday is like a puzzle. You can work on it. You can miss a piece, but you can still get the idea, the big picture of what we're talking about. So we look forward to seeing you on Friday, and we definitely look forward to you listening in tomorrow. And you'll meet our artist facilitators, and they will talk a little bit about the work that they're doing, something that they've learned about the project that maybe they didn't experience before. And then again, that's part of our creative process and how we flow into Friday. So we look forward to you checking back in with us and listening to our podcast and participating on Friday.